few people here that need to be educated, because that's the purpose of Hempfest. Somebody said, you know, Hempfest, man, you're preaching to the choir. And we said, no, we're not, man. The choir's got to rehearse somewhere, you know.
Marijuana smokers have a well-deserved reputation of some really good qualities, like being tolerant and open-minded, and these are wonderful things. I just wonder if they haven't hurt us in this struggle, because we should be intolerant of the injustice that is going on.
So what you got here is a processor making biodiesel to use kitchen grease. I go around to different restaurants around the Northwest here, or actually where I live in Olympia, and get from them their grease that was in their fryers. And they usually toss it out. And this process here takes the grease and sucks it into a machine with this hose here, and chemically cracks it into a much smaller molecule, one that you can burn in a diesel fuel car. And after it's been processed, you can pump it right into your fuel tank of your car with this hose.
Really?
Finished product.
We have existing technology to replace the internal combustion engine with non-polluting sources of energy.
It is true that in times of crisis, the people often lead the leaders.
Yeah.
It becomes our responsibility to make our voices very clear, very passionate, because we're in very dangerous times. I mean, when one country has 1/4 of the world's prisoners.
People in power have the money and the guns, and we've got facts, that is the truth, and we've got moral authority. We're the ones who want no starving children in the world. We're the ones who want no clear-cut forests. We're the ones that want organic food that doesn't poison us. So we will win, right? This is not a guessing game. I'm not making a prediction. We will win.
You know, I meet a lot of people who really are interested in changing the world. I bet if I ask all of you, if you thought the world needed changing, what would you say? Yeah, it needs changing.
Now, for those who aren't familiar with this plant, it's 5,000 years old and has 50,000 uses, and it's been mixed up with the marijuana issue. Industrial hemp is a source of food. It's a source of fuel. It replaces cutting down trees because it's a great way to make paper. It produces medicines, lubricants, all kinds of products. And it's a plant that can be grown almost anywhere in the United States with almost no pesticides or herbicides. It's the longest, sturdiest fiber plant on Earth.
We're here to say the truth and how it has affected us and other people who have loved ones in prison.
My personal situation is I've chronic anemia since I was a child, which flipped into leukemia, and through all of the medications and all of the treatments, I've maxed out my lifetime maximum for radiation treatment. I've been through 2 serious courses of chemotherapy. This last situation that led up to my coming to cannabis as a medication was I was down to 102 pounds. I was warehoused to a hospice. There was nothing left for me.
And in Oregon, at least, where I was living in the 60s and early 70s, the powers that be understood very clearly that we had a unified movement, that marijuana was associated with resistance to the war in Vietnam, that was associated with civil rights activities, that was actually associated with bringing black and white people together.
And so people have used hemp since 10,000 BC or so to make food, clothing, housing, paper, energy, all the fundamentals which we use again today. It hasn't changed that much, the way that we live our lives. We have a more technological society, but we still have to take care of the basic necessities of life. And hemp provides that for people.
And when there is no logical answers as to why we're doing something that we're continuing to do, the answer becomes quite ominous.
If we don't start doing things in our society that's going to create jobs and permanent infrastructural developments to take care of the needs of the society, if we think that the whole thing can be based upon sucking petrochemicals out of the ground, making into toxic byproducts which are then disposed of into the environment, making everybody sick. I mean, what are the industries we're going to have left? We're going to have selling stuff that's made out of poisons. We're going to have cleaning up the poisonous mess. We're going to have treating each other for all the poisonous, toxic infestations that happen to our bodies as a result of doing what we're doing right now, what we've been doing for the past 100 years or so. And so hemp gives us a lifeline, an opportunity to make ourselves a way to get out of this quagmire, not only of what we're seeing as the doldrums of the economy, an economy of lies and bubbles, but into an economy of solid, tangible, real things, but into an environmentally sound and sustainable kind of an economy, something that we can leave to our future generations.
We're destroying the ability of the planet to support human civilization unless we turn this sucker around.
And since late 1930s, it's been prohibited because it's been put on the prescribed list. First, the paper companies didn't want it for obvious reasons. It was competition. But it's now still on the DEA prescribed list. And we've had a petition with farm groups and state legislators and others trying to liberate it from the DEA prescribed list. But General McCaffrey's been sitting on it for 3 years and not responding to the petition.
Now, if I ask most of you, do you appreciate the policies of the United States government? Now, if you were to watch Fox News or listen to Clear Channel or whatever, you know, you might think that your opinion is in the minority.
I was a cancer patient. I was recovering from lymphoma. I was racked with a disease that had eviscerated my soul, my being. I was in a hospital after having a negative reaction to chemotherapy. Somebody from Oakland, California, I don't want to tell you who, shipped a box of butter-basted cookies to me in the hospital to enable me to eat just a little bit better. And you know how when you're sick, people bring you food, they send you flowers. So I had to go for some emergency surgery again. I get out of the hospital, I'm waking up. I'm surrounded by my mother from Kings Point, the nurses, my family, my friends, these lawyers, these doctors, and they're all sitting around eating cookies.
I'm proud and privileged to be here and working with everybody. It's not easy being an owner of a cannabis buyers club, especially when the federal government is shaking their fist at you and they put your face on a bullseye and you know it's only a matter of time, but maybe not.
See, we need to unify our movement and not neglect and reject politics. And we're hearing that today real strong. So we're seeking unity. We want to remember how they divide us. We want to remember that the drug war is a very unified and huge problem, and we can all take part in it, and that's why we can work together around racial issues.
It's time for all of us who say that we're fighting against these evil laws to come together and to respect each other.
What happened was I started to eat. Once I started to eat, I started to tolerate the steroids that allowed me to tolerate the medications for my treatment. It was not necessarily the cannabis that saved my life. I'm not going to say hallelujah, sweet Jesus for cannabis, but I'm going to say it made me eat, and eating saved my life.
Ladies and gentlemen, the foremost baker of marijuana in America, Ed Rosenthal.
What a little notoriety can do, and I recommend it for everyone. I was working for 30 years trying to promote my books and, you know, get marijuana legal and things like that. And, you know, just one little arrest and just move it so far. Now, if everybody here got arrested and just had a little support group, and then we could just move this thing along really quickly.
I have a son who's been incarcerated, who was a first-time offender. First-time offense, he received a 30-year sentence. He later on was able to, because of the appeal system, get downgraded to 19 years. He's 37 years old, and he's been locked up for 12. He has a 12-year-old daughter who is a poet, who is an achiever, And he has done all of this while being locked up. He's encouraged her. And just because our people and our children are locked away, they can still do great things. And we need to also be about encouraging them, writing to them, sending messages of love.
Yeah, it's a much cleaner fuel than diesel fuel ever could even try to be. It doesn't have sulfur in it. Diesel fuel has sulfur, and that, one, is pretty rough on a diesel engine, and two, the emissions of sulfur dioxide, that's what creates acid rain.
Maybe we have the arguments about science and rational basis, and maybe if we can actually get into court with the truth, that the truth might come out. But then maybe not, we don't know what's going on. But what we can do is we can change things individually. And that's what I feel that I've done as a patient, getting well, bringing medical marijuana to the other patients, getting a license to distribute medical marijuana to the other patients in a way that the bureaucracy can understand. They can look at all the books and see that we're broke, honest, and doing a good service.
Where I am now, I'm able to help. We do up to 200 people a week through phone calls. We have an outreach project called Patients Educating Patients. You can find the information on Green Cross it's greencross@hemp.net.
I had a 5x5 grow room, 25 square feet, 70 plants in it. It gave me 93 years for first-time offense. Tried to break me off for the rest of my life. You know, it's ludicrous.
The casualties are still going to go down and take a few more bullets, but I really believe that this is the time that everything's going to change.
This stage is the McWilliams stage. The McWilliams stage is in honor of Peter McWilliams. I represent Rene Boger. Rene watered and moved some plants in the Todd McCormick grow-up near Reagan's house down there, and in the result they charged her. She went through about 15 skin searches down in the LA County Jail before they finally released her. And then they dropped the charges against her. She came up to Canada, and she was found in a medical grow-up on the Sunshine Coast.
We're persecuted enough with our pain and our illnesses. We don't need to be persecuted by the courts. After 900,000 people said it's okay for us to do what we do. We'll counsel you on how to speak to your physician. We'll speak to your physician if they have any questions. We visit support groups for every kind of malady that you can imagine. It's a good, worthwhile thing that I do, and I love closing my eyes at night because I've got a smile on my face. But basically, I guess what I want to say is Green Cross has been around since 1993.
So anybody notice any of your local health food store got hemp on the shelves?
And it had longer shelf life, and it was much more delicious, and you know, we got good endorsements from doctors, and everything was going really good till the government shut it down. I was telling you about Hemplands and how good that was for us. All of a sudden, my company was booming. We were on that oil press 24/7 for over a year. We were bringing in a container load of hemp seeds a month, and we're looking at all this stuff, and the federal government said, oh, nope, you can't sell it as hemp and ale. Even though we gave you full approval for this, we've changed our minds, and you can't sell this product anymore because hemp is equal to marijuana, and therefore you're creating the impression in consumers that it's marijuana, So they've really done a great job of shutting down the hemp industry right now.
Well, you know, we were having a lot of momentum in health until the government came down on us on October 9th. You know, in the wake of September 7th, they all of a sudden said, whoa, we can do our whole agenda. And one little facet of their agenda was to get rid of hemp.
So she was part of the medical marijuana community in California. She became part of the medical marijuana community in Canada. And when they found her, they moved to extradite her.
We have a new terrorist in America, and it's our government. This is the DEA. They're busting us every day.
But yet the DEA is turning all of their efforts to trying to buzz patients and people who help them to safe access to their medication. So we started a direct action campaign, started on June 6th in 55 cities. We went to DEA offices and served them with cease and desist orders. And what they said is that from here on out, we're now taking a zero-tolerance stance with the federal government. That if they make another unauthorized entry into a medical marijuana dispensary, that they can expect a grassroots uprising, that they can expect an escalation in tactics. And on June 6th, we had 4 different civil disobediences In D.C., a group of activists chained themselves to the front of the federal building. In San Francisco, we asked the DEA just to come down and take our order, and they wouldn't take it, so we sat down in front of the doors and were hauled off. And but what we really did on that day is that we sent a clear message to the federal government that this 73% of the people that support medical marijuana, that there are actually human bodies behind those numbers.
She also made a refugee claim as a political refugee from your war on drugs. She has a fear that if she comes back here, and it's a very realistic and reasonable fear, there's threatening her with 10 years to life for moving and watering these plants in McCormick's Grove. Now, if that isn't not only disproportionate, but grossly disproportionate, I don't know what is. And of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's because your judges are forced to impose those types of penalties.
In South Dakota, White Plumed, I believe is the area, by the Black Hills. This is Indian Holy Land. There's a native, there's a Lakota sovereign nation located there. And what's happened is for the past 3 years, I believe it is, the farmer there has gone out, Dennis Whitehorse, and went in, he goes ahead and he plants his hemp. They get the seeds from gathering it around the United States and take it over there and they grow it. And the DEA comes in and cuts it down every year when it's about ready to harvest, just before he's ready to harvest it. So if anybody knows very much about hemp and the way that it works, if you've got seeded hemp plants and you go out there and you pull them up, what are you doing? You're breaking up the soil and you're knocking the seeds into the soil, right? So the DEA comes in there and they ripped up his plants. Well, as a result of the way they did it, it reseeded and it came back. And so this year, Dennis went out there and he went ahead and he harvested this crop, right? Of DEA planted hemp. Now, what the next step is the DEA has now filed for an injunction to stop him so that in the future, if the DEA plants hemp on his land, he has to not pick it anymore.
I want you to know that I lost one eye and went through 12 years of hell. And in those 12 years, little by little, I was blinded in my right eye because of this unfair laws. I have never lost any sight to glaucoma. I lost it to poor treatments of glaucoma. But I have maintained my sight and I see you with my left eye thanks to the cannabis.
Your federal government is really putting a lot of pressure on the Canadian government to try and stop the medical marijuana.
So they said, oh, hemp equals marijuana. This is just an edict on the part of the DEA. Forget all these regulations and all those other things. This product that you got on your shelves is illegal.
We've got cases of people who were growing in the States who fled to Canada who are not big medical marijuana users, and they don't seem to be paying much attention to them. They're more focused on the medical marijuana.
There's other people like I want to talk about. One is a Dennis Hunter. I think somebody's handing some things out, facing 20 to life currently right now, sitting in prison for violating federal drug law, not California drug law.
You could be next. I choose love over hatred. I choose hope over fear, truth over lies. We would support a war against addiction, poverty, and abuse, but you can only wage a war against people. A campaign to educate and train Americans and beyond to understand these dangers. It's our only hope against all this craziness.
The first time I visited my brother in Wisconsin, I watched them process what was a busload of young men in belly chains and shackles, and it looked to me a scene out of Roots. And I looked at my brother and I said, is this what is going on? And he said, yeah, it's a slave ship. And there's a few white guys caught up in it. Marijuana and race. Most of the people at the Hemp Fest today are white marijuana advocates. But most of the marijuana prisoners are black marijuana smokers.
I have two sons in federal prison. My sons have been in prison now for 14 years. They should have never gone to prison. If we'd have had the money to pay for lawyers in Charlotte, they may not have gone. But because they were young black men and they were targeted, they're there.
In 1970, there was a man that saw that the marijuana laws in America were wrong. And he decided to do something about it. And he started the #1 primo organization, the KIND organization, to fight these laws. The only organization that's been at the forefront of the battleground since day one, since 1970. That's like 32 years he's been fighting for us. We're a little behind schedule, so I'd like to give him a lot longer introduction. But
I am a proud member of the Washington State chapter of the National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you not only the founder, but the executive director of the national chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, Keith Stropp. Give him a warm welcome.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It should be of no interest or concern to the government. It is time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers.
Introduce yourself. Keith Stropp. I'm the executive director of NORMA. Okay. Could you tell us how you decided to start this? Yes, at the time it was the middle of the anti-Vietnam War protests in Washington. I was just coming out of law school. I was very much caught up in the anti-war movement, and we began to notice that they were arresting a lot of people on minor marijuana charges when really what they were angry about was they had a peace sticker on their bumper. You know, in other words, they sort of, during that era, there was a lot of hostility between the police and the anti-war protesters. And so when they saw a vehicle that had a peace symbol, a lot of times they'd find an excuse to pull it over and search it for drugs or something. So a lot of people were getting busted for marijuana when that wasn't really what the deal was at all. They began to, friends of mine began to call me because I was fresh out of law school. And it appeared to me that it was endless to try to help one person at a time. So I had just finished working for a project for Ralph Nader.
Go get him, Ralph Nader. Watch this.
The American people have bounced back many times. All through our history, when things seem dark, the crooks seem on top, the double standard of the law, greed is a cancer, they bounce back. I mean, the abolition of slavery was a great step forward in American history. The women's right to vote, the trade union movement, the farmers who came out of East Texas in 1887 and swept through much of the country for the great populist progressive reform against the greedy railroads and the greedy banks that were strangling their livelihoods. Now it's your generation's time. It's our generation's time to put our arm to the wheel of justice. And we have the power if we believe we have the power. We've got to organize.
I had seen the effectiveness he had developed by taking the consumer perspective, and we kicked it around and decided that's what we needed with marijuana. We needed the consumer perspective to be involved in the public debate, and by that means the smokers. Because up to this point, there were no smokers involved. You had people that didn't have a clue about marijuana, never smoked it, never will, making decisions affecting the lives of smokers. So at any event, that was the genesis for NORMA, and it remains our focus today. We represent smokers.
There's people like James Geddes that petitions have helped, and that's what we have to do. We have to be active, go out there and sign our petitions, get these people out of jails, come out of the closet. We come out of the closet, they're coming out. Bottom line, they'll be out of jail. But it's the public support that does everything. Trust me, I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for people like Vivian and Dominic and Mickey, Chris, Drug Policy Foundation, so many to name, but they organized, and that's what's ensured my freedom today.
And love is what's going to win. You know, love is where it's at, and that is what medical marijuana is all about. It's about love. It's about the truth. It's about bringing the truth forward and bringing our family home from the jails, stopping the terrorism by the wrong people against the wrong people.
We have to come and take a stand against this evil law. I mean, not on paper and going somewhere and just talking about it, but in person.
We would ask that you write letters, send cards, or whatever to our loved ones. I'm sure you know that the November Coalition has a website that's up and running all the time. So you can get information about our loved ones from the website so that you could be in touch with them. Because we need for you not to just talk about it, we need for you to be proactive in caring for them, because they need love and care as well as fighting, trying to get the laws changed.
I assume you all know that early drafts of the Declaration of Independence were written on paper made from that plant that played such an important role in our nation's early history, hemp. Prohibition violates this relationship between individual liberty and government power that was reflected in the Declaration of Independence.
It seems everybody has an opinion about the legalization of marijuana. We're talking about this issue tonight. First, with retired Army General Barry McCaffrey. As you know, he was the nation's drug czar from 1996 to 2001. He doesn't think pot should be legal for any reason. Also joining us is Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico. You can hear me, Governor?
I can hear you, Phil.
Very good.
First off, let me say, as somebody who's smoked marijuana and doesn't smoke it anymore, marijuana is a handicap. Don't smoke marijuana. I would also like to say, not having had a drink in 15 years, to quit drinking alcohol. It's a terrible handicap, and until you quit, do you realize what a handicap it is. But that said, should we continue to make it criminal for the use of marijuana? And the statistics you cite are correct. About 800,000 people a year now are being arrested for marijuana. About 90% of those arrests are for possession only. So clearly we cannot continue to arrest and incarcerate this country over the use of marijuana.
And so what we're showing is that we are a visible constituency, and that by going against our will and going into dispensaries, that they can expect an uprising from us as far as getting our voice out there and being present in our communities.
We, as you are aware, had one arrest at one of our clubs on 6th Street here in San Francisco, a kind of complicated situation, and Asa Hutchison appeared in San Francisco the day after that arrest to give a speech. I know I saw him on TV talking about it a while back, and his comment was, I appeared there to give a speech in San Francisco, and you know what? The DA was out front picketing me.
When I was in England, I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
Well, that was Bill Clinton, as you know, during the 1992 presidential campaign, admitting that he tried marijuana.
And I know up here in the Puget Sound region, just this past year, they realized that the #1 cause of air pollution, the biggest cause of air pollution in Puget Sound is exhaust from diesel engines and boats and anything that runs on a diesel type of engine. So biodiesel is actually a really good way to clean up that problem. And they're using it quite a bit now, a blend called B20. It's 20% biodiesel, 80% fossil diesel. And the B20 runs so much cleaner than normal diesel that a lot of bus companies and municipal companies that have old trucks are able to keep running their trucks longer because with B20 they can meet the emission standards that are supposed to be meeting. But if you go to 100% biodiesel, most of your toxins from the engine will drop about 60 to 80% with 100% biodiesel or 100% diesel. You can buy this stuff all over Europe now. There's over 1,000 gas stations around Germany where they're using it, selling it. And all the new car manufacturers all there are happy to warranty their cars on it because it burns so much cleaner than normal diesel fuel. So I'd recommend anyone who wants to find out more about it to visit the website journey2forever.org. It's spelled right here. You can see it also.
I think that very few people in America are put behind bars when chronically addicted to drugs for simple possession. I think that's a false argument. I think the number of arrests we're quoting on marijuana are sort of nonsense.
4.1 million marijuana arrests during the Clinton years. 4.1 million.
Well, but again, you look at the number of people that drive drunk. I mean, do we want to stop arresting people for driving drunk because 9 out of 10 aren't arrested when they do it? We think that having strong social disapproval of marijuana is helpful. It would
I do too. Governor?
Well, let's have strong social disapproval for marijuana. Let's decriminalize marijuana. Let's say that it's bad to do. But we're criminalizing a behavior here that arguably, when somebody doesn't do any harm to anyone, again, other than themselves, is criminal and can end you up in jail. Look, the government maintains that there are about 13 million users of drugs on a fairly regular basis. I just find this incredible to believe, given that we're arresting 1.6 million people a year on drug-related crime. That's like 1 out of 7. I have this sense that when the government says we're down to like 1 million users of drugs, we're going to be arresting 18 million people a year. And I don't want to be flippant here, but I'm going to live to see 80 million Americans arrested in this country. That is not to condone marijuana use, but I got to tell you, the punishment is way out of context to the act.
Marijuana is an incredibly popular drug today in America. In fact, it is the third most popular drug, recreational drug, exceeded in popularity only by alcohol and tobacco, two legal but far more dangerous drugs. According to the government, 76 million Americans have smoked pot at some time in their lives. That's 1 out of 3 adults in this entire country. 18 to 20 million Americans smoked pot during the last year. Now, the vast majority of those people are good people who work hard, who raise families, who pay taxes, who contribute to their communities. We are not criminals, and it is time we stop being treated like criminals.
I'm getting a little tired of being treated like a criminal and second-class citizen by people who, through their preference for liquor or pills to mood alterate themselves, show not a superiority of taste, but an inferiority of taste.
Look, I know that the opinion you have about this country, about this government not being the government that we need, about this government having wars on other countries, oil wars.
Through that website you can hook up and find other groups all around the world that are making biodiesel on this scale. This is micro biodiesel. So good luck with this. Okay.
So you are the creator of this, right?
No, I just made this processor. The technology biodiesel's been around as, well, actually the original diesel engine made by Rudolf Diesel in the late 1800s ran on peanut oil. So it did not run on fossil diesel. That was later on. But the process of this process called transesterification, where you can take a very big grease molecule and turn it into a much smaller molecule that can run a diesel engine, started about the 1940s, as far back as I can tell. And I'm just trying to promote it because we're not as tied to the oil companies as they would like us to think. We have these solutions.
I started a website called Voice Yourself. It's about trying to unify all the people who feel the way we do, the people who care. I want you to check out Voice Yourself. I want you to get involved with it and write me a note on it and tell me how you feel, and let's figure out together what we're going to do to change the way things are going, because I believe it can change and it will change and it has to change.
Marijuana prohibition is a costly and failed public policy for 3 basic reasons, and we need to be prepared to argue these positions with those who still want to treat us like criminals. First off, marijuana prohibition wastes an incredible amount of law enforcement resources that should be focused on serious and violent crime, including fighting terrorism.
Fight for what you believe in. After all, if you don't have anything to stand for, you will definitely be knocked down on your own. At least what you stand for will be something that will be left when it's all over. You are making a better world, and I want you to know that you have friends all over the world. There's enough research to support our claims over and over again.
Barry McCaffrey is here, the former drug czar. You told me that was really one of the most rewarding times of your life, professionally speaking.
Sure, you know, I was honored to be part of it. We had huge increases in drug prevention funding, drug treatment programs. Governor Johnson and I have certainly disagreed before.
I've come here today to bring you a message from the prisoners of war in America. The war on drugs is a fraud!
You know, great respect for him as a person, but we're also listening to a guy that called for the legalization of heroin. New Mexico is the highest death rate of heroin in the country. I personally
find, I got to cut in here right now.
His views on this
never advocated the legalization of heroin. Never. Talked about harm reduction strategies for heroin, and we have cut down the usage of death. We've cut down death from heroin from overdose in the state of New Mexico, and nobody seems to really care about that, and that's what we've done. Never advocated the legalization of heroin. What I've talked about is harm reduction strategies on all these other drugs, and that is basically to look at this problem as a health problem rather than a criminal justice problem. And these are the things I get thrown at me all the time.
Governor Ventura and Governor Johnson represent an irresponsible viewpoint.
We waste between $7.5 billion and $10 billion every year in this country trying to identify, chase, arrest, and jail marijuana smokers. And unfortunately, the government does too damn good a job at it. They arrest over 700,000 people each year in this country simply on marijuana charges. 88% of those arrests are for simple possession.
We figured we had 2 tons of hemp products in our basement, and that was enough for the life sentence. If it wasn't marijuana, any other drug, it would have been the death penalty, but it was a life sentence without possibility of parole for having hemp in the basement. And it's been downhill from there. You know, just because the government did that to the hemp industry, it lost momentum. We were just there, we were on the brink of it. We were doing the big natural food shows, and there were 23 hemp booths, and every manufacturer out there was looking at how they were going to put hemp into their line of products. And the DEA put the kibosh on it.
General, I have to say, you are ascribing the word, you're using the word irresponsible to describe a stance that has been assumed by former Secretary of State George Shultz.
No, wait, I talked about heroin
by Milton
use.
Friedman.
I talked about heroin use and 48,000 dead a year from drugs in America. So
well, the governor is denying that. I wish it were possible, because I think you're both civil people here, responsible people. I know that the governor is bone dry, no alcohol, no nothing, and I think, you know, he's saying, like so many others are saying, that we're looking a little bit hysterical here.
There's another marijuana smoker arrested in this country every 46 seconds.
And the reason I want to bring this up is because how important people are, and that means you guys. Basically, right now you can go to Staples and buy hemp paper. It's the Heritage, what's it called again?
Yes, right, Heritage Bond.
Heritage Bond paper. It's got 10% hemp in it. So we need you guys to go out there and buy those hemp products. This industry as it exists now is built by people like you. This country was built by people like you. So that means the power has to come back to you. You have to get on the juries and acquit, but you also have to get out there, buy hemp products, and get involved in manufacturing hemp products, and work with the Hemp Industries Association.
What is the deal? What's holding us back right now? Like what is the one obstacle in which we must overcome?
Apathy.
It's also, I should mention, very good fuel in that by growing the vegetable that you make your biodiesel out of, whether it be canola or corn or olive oil, whatever you're using, you're going to be pulling 2 and 3 times as much carbon dioxide. That's a problem. Carbon dioxide is one of the problems with global warming. You're going to be pulling, by growing these plants, you're going to be pulling 2 or 3 times as much carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to make the cellulose of the plants as the carbon dioxide that will come out the tailpipe when you burn the fuel later. So it's a very important contender for fighting global warming, and we should all be demanding that the oil companies be selling biodiesel, and our farmers can grow. There's a lot of farmers in this country that are paid not to grow. They could be growing the feedstock to make these plants, and it's a much cleaner fuel all around. So I encourage you to call your legislatures and tell them we want biodiesel, because there's no reason why we can't have it. It's all over Europe, like I said. It's all over the place. It's just Americans, we're not offered these alternatives, and we have to demand them, and that's the only way they're going to get it.
Ask yourself this, or ask your friends and relatives this. If the major export of the Middle East were broccoli, would any of this stuff be going on? No, it wouldn't, right?
Oil war is an interesting term because it's the #1 and the #2 industry in the world. The war industry being #1, the oil industry being #2. The prison industry being the fastest growing industry.
It's about oil, and it's about our industrial machine and the automobiles being based on burning dead dinosaurs, petrochemicals. So definitely check out the brother over here with the biodiesel display.
now we're doing a hemp car this weekend, next weekend, in it's going to go through Missouri this summer, and South Dakota. South Dakota's the hottest state for hemp going. And then we got a hemp motorcycle project happening, and then the other one we're working on, and I'm going to be up there next week, we got this hemp boat. We think this hemp boat's going to go over 100 miles an hour. And so we're going to start racing the hemp boat.
But we're in a unique situation, because even though Gore won, he lost because he was too chicken shit to come out and say something decent about marijuana. Now, I don't know whether Clinton smokes. I actually think Clinton never did smoke. I actually think Clinton didn't use drugs. But I know that Gore did. He likes the Grateful Dead. He had the Grateful Dead to Blair House, the Vice President's house, and had dinner with him. He's been in some very smoky places. And I know as a fact, and I'm not going to tell you how, but you just have to take my word for it. I know as a fact that he smoked medical marijuana since he lost the election. But let's go from there. But so I'm glad he lost. As bad as Bush is, I'm glad Gore lost.
Why are the people that we pay for, our tax dollars, are paying the salary of the very police that beat me up and put me in jail when I was a very sick woman in 1990? I went to jail for medical marijuana. I came out of jail sicker than ever, but very righteously indignant. And here I am today going mano a mano with the federal government. But we have a good argument. What is the rational basis? What is it that why they can't look at the science of marijuana as medicine? Why they can't look at the science of industrial hemp, which could change the whole dynamics and end the war all over the world, because the war all over the world right now is all about oil.
Now tell me, if someone were to turn like hemp into an oil and put it through this system right here, would it work?
Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you can make biodiesel from hemp.
I went to Hawaii a few weeks ago, and the only legalized area for industrial hemp licensed by the government as a pilot project was right outside Honolulu. And we go outside, there's this area circumscribed by a fence, and then an area the size of this stage where this plant is being grown.
So we are clearly wasting an enormous amount of law enforcement resources that must be focused on serious and violent crime.
Surrounded by a barbed wire fence with great Klieg lights. I didn't see any bloodhounds or anything, but great Klieg lights. And there's one scientist there in charge. And he traipsed us over, and we saw this little green plant growing, you know. Didn't seem to have any threat to it or anything. And I asked him, how are things going? He has a very wry sense of humor, and he said, well, you know, I have to keep filling out reports to the government.
Here's what we have to say to the Democrats. If you take the Green vote and you take the Libertarian vote, it comes in each state to between 4 to 6%. Some places 7%. And you divide that vote in half, it's 3.5%. 3.5% of the vote. That is the marijuana vote. That's the people who say, I'm not going to vote for a candidate who wants to put me in jail, even if they want to put me in jail for a teensy bit of time. Who say, I'm not voting that way. I'll vote Green, I'll vote Libertarian, I'll vote Peace and Freedom, I'll vote Marijuana Party. Well, you add all those up. Now we said it's 3.5%, but it's 7% of what you need to win, because you only need 50% plus one vote to win. So it's about 7% of what you need to vote. And here's our challenge to the Democratic Party. You're not going to get those votes too much unless you start changing your tune. And if Gore had said, well, I think we should investigate the scientific value of medical marijuana, he would have gotten that 7%.
Well, I just think it's very hypocritical that we haven't criminalized tobacco use, that we haven't criminalized alcohol use, but gee, we did try that before. You know, America is founded on freedom. And with that goes personal accountability and responsibility. And again, you smoke marijuana, do harm to anybody else, put yourself in a position to do harm to somebody else, just like alcohol. That ought to be the concentration. We ought to put you behind bars. Look, from where I sit, when half of what we're spending on law enforcement, half of what we're spending on the courts, and half of what we're spending on the prisons is drug-related, this is crazy.
We're getting tied up. People going to jail for small amounts of marijuana for large amounts of time.
The government has figured out that you don't have to fool all the people all the time. If you fool some of the people some of the time, that's good enough, and that's what's happening here. Otherwise, how could it be? In a country where 60% at least of the people don't think they ought to jail marijuana smokers, only 30% think marijuana ought to be legalized. It doesn't make any sense. It's because they've got us fooled.
This is not just about a plant. This is not just about being able to get high. This is about freedom itself. This is about life itself.
And we need to do something about it. Everybody's saying, do this, do that. Well, here's one thing we can do. It seems to me the first step is to understand we're not going to have an armed revolution, you know. There's not going to be riots in the streets. There may be some civil disobedience, but the change is going to come when those in the wheelhouse, those elected representatives, either the ones we elect or the ones we become, when they decide it's time to change these terrible rules. We have to educate them and let them know we'll stand behind them. We have to educate our leaders and elevate our educated leaders, and the ignorant ones, we have to eliminate them. It's as simple as that. And by that I mean we run them out of office.
Last night, some birds came in over the fence and ate some of the hemp seed. I asked them, well, did they go out wobbly? He said, no, they're okay. They got up, but I had to fill it. I had to fill out the form anyway.
Nobody took it from him. The Greens didn't take it from him. What he did is he took loss from the jaws of victory. That's what he did. He was a loser. He deserved to lose for it. So here's what we have to say to the Democratic Party. We're not coming to you out of weakness begging you to do something good for us. We're telling you the way it is. You're not going to win till you vote for marijuana, because we're not going to vote for you till you vote for us.
43% of all drug arrests in this country are simply arrests of marijuana smokers.
Because every administration faces that same nagging problem, that so many things kill so many people. I mean, alcohol kills hundreds of thousands, tobacco, 400,000. The shitty, crappy food that people eat in this country kills hundreds of thousands. Doctors fucking up kill 100,000 people. Pot, zero. Always zero.
Julianne, are you there?
I am.
You wanted to say briefly.
I did. You know, General McCaffrey used the word dangerous to describe marijuana, and it seems to me that marijuana, as opposed to alcohol, causes no violence. We know that alcohol causes thousands of deaths in this country, both on the road and through disease. You never hear of a stoned person starting a fight or doing harm to themselves or anyone else.
I was wondering if you're not busy, if I could ask you a few questions. Hey, I was wondering about how many accidents actually happen here.
At Hemplands?
Yeah, how many accidents have you guys had?
Well, I can't say we really had any accident. We had a 6-year-old girl who skinned her knee, and we had just a young lady now who passed out probably from being a little dehydrated. It's usually pretty quiet. A lot of people are pretty, I'll say they're pretty mellow and peaceful. So any place you have a venue where you have a lot of people, there's always the possibility that we're going to go there. So, you know.
So on comparison, just by what you've heard and stuff, are there more accidents here or at a Mariners game?
There's probably more at a Mariners game. Well, there's more foul balls at a Mariners games than there are here.
What about alcoholics? Have you guys ever heard any reports on alcoholics at a Mariners game causing trouble?
Any place you have a lot of people and alcohol, there's always the possibility. And I know that there have been times when the security people have had to issue people out because they've been kind of rude and disruptive and stuff like that. So the Mariners staff's got a really good handle on it.
So what about here? Is there anyone who's been getting high and who's been causing trouble around here?
No, as a matter of fact, they got it really well under control. It's pretty impressive.
Well.
So I'm curious, how does the general support his characterization?
Well, first of all, I think that alcohol is an enormously harmful drug that causes 150,000 dead a year, possibly as much as $150 million of damage. It is clearly part of the poly-drug abuse problem in America. And, you know, I think we ought to be glad that the use rates have gone down, but we ought to be equally glad that the adolescent population, cigarettes and alcohol use is the lowest in 15 years.
Yes.
We ought to be glad that the illegal drug use rates is the lowest in 8 years. And we ought to be concerned about the fact that the majority of the people behind bars, in fact, have a poly-drug abuse problem. I don't agree that marijuana is not a dangerous drug. Neither does the National Institute of Drug Abuse, probably more importantly than what I think.
You're not suggesting, did you suggest that you thought prohibition worked?
Well, I didn't talk about it. Governor Johnson did.
Marijuana prohibition is a failed public policy because we are needlessly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of good citizens each year in this country for no good purpose. We have declared war against a whole segment of our population for no cause. The American public know the difference between marijuana and more dangerous drugs. They know the difference between marijuana and violent crime, and they oppose overwhelmingly spending $25,000 a year to lock up a nonviolent marijuana smoker. Specifically, the Normal Foundation commissioned the National Zogby poll a few months ago, and we found that 61% of the American public are now on our side. They said they oppose arresting and jailing marijuana smokers. 61%.
Not only are we getting like 80% in the polls, not only the farmers behind it, not only the voters going to pass this thing, but also in South Dakota they have a jury power initiative, which means that the juries should be informed that they have a right to vote their conscience in the interest of justice if they think the law is wrong.
You've got to get involved. Please, for the sake of the next person to go down, for the sake of the cancer patients and MS patients, for the sake of the ancient timber that's left 20%, please get involved.
But now all the VW TDIs are turbo diesel injected, and you can buy them at VW. And actually, there's a fella right here in Ballard, Dan Freeman. He has Dr. Dan's Alternative Fuel Works. He's selling biodiesel. You can buy it for your car. And he told me yesterday, he was here, he's got about 30 or 40 accounts, people who have brand new VWs that have never run on fossil diesel. They bought them because they found out you could do this kind of fuel. And those cars, I guarantee, are going to last twice as long as the fossil ones. Do you get better gas mileage? It's about the same gas mileage, but a lot less wear and tear on the engine. And better emissions? Yeah, oh, way better emissions. 60, 90% better.
If you tried to pass emissions, like the emissions test,
they probably wouldn't even show up on their meter.
And of course, whenever I go anywhere, I take you with me, and I make sure that other people know that Americans are good, caring people who have politicians that are not listening to them today, and that's it. But we need to put on the pressure. There is no reason why a single patient should worry about competing against the petroleum industry, which is destroying our planet by substituting this plant with over 50,000 products. There is no reason why those chemical products should continue to do the destruction they're doing. But there is also no reason why a single patient's medicine should be denied so we can continue to have our politicians back the ever-growing corrupt prison industry of which we are a backbone. We've got to end that. Now the election time has come, and you need to demand responsibility and compassion from your legislators who can no longer outlaw those instincts for you. Let them know you know, and let the true spirit of love keep on guiding you. Keep up the good work.
It's changing around the world, but it's changing from the local level up. So what we got to focus on is mobilizing local networks that can pass local law that favors the local green economy and the green enterprises, the organic, the recycling, the solar, the hemp, the decriminalization of pot. And also, those local laws will be how we will stop the World Trade Organization, the Free Trade Area of the Americas, the IMF, the World Bank, all those big money, global government, global corporate institutions, because they will not be able to beat us in hundreds and hundreds of local communities. They won't even be able to send out enough of their flax to do the propaganda work. So that's how we're going to transform this system. Thank you very much.
I don't want to see nobody in jail. I've experienced, and it's not a fun place, especially for young kids. So I'm going to let Vivian have it back here. Oh wait, I want to I want to let Shireen here talk for 1 second here and let her describe what's going on in her family. Her husband is Dennis that had 20 to life.
Hi. The DEA came in and kidnapped my husband on March 28th. It's taken all I can to stand up here and talk, but I brought a petition today. I'd like to have every one of you sign it. Just send the federal government a message that this isn't okay. We're destroying American families. I mean, my husband's facing 20 to life. My 2-year-old child doesn't recognize his dada anymore. He's been there for 5 months and they won't bail him out, or they won't let him out on bail. And I mean, I don't know what else to do, you know, but get the awareness out there and let people know this is happening.
Out of fear based on ignorance, good and well-intentioned people have allowed a brutal and heartless crusade to be perpetrated against kind, sensible and responsible Americans. This crusade in the name of fighting addiction and abuse, crime and violence is a war against certain Americans. They call it the drug war. They say they want a drug-free America, drug-free. Zoloft, Vicodin, Halcyon, Viagra, morphine, Valium, OxyContin. Drug-free America? How can our intelligence be so insulted?
Since 9/11, how many terrorists have been arrested? And how many people like my husband? That's right, too damn many.
I want you to imagine an army of black-clad, faceless, shielded troopers breaking down your doors and rushing into your sacred home. Laser dots cover your chest and head and those of your family, children, and friends. You're handcuffed. You're thrown down on the floor. They take you away and deposit you like a slab of dead meat into a cell, barren and cold. They persecute you for having some flowers from the magic plant.
Enough is enough. I'd like to give this back to Will. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Shireen. That is what's going on in America today, and it's up to us to stop it.
Marijuana prohibition invites the government into areas of our private lives that are frankly just inappropriate. We don't want the government coming into our house to know what books we read, what music we listen to, how we conduct ourselves in the privacy of our bedroom, and neither is it any of their damn business whether we smoke a joint or drink alcohol when we relax in the evening.
The drug war is a sham. It's a lie, an evil crusade against our culture. Bring it down now!
They can't sit up there and look down on people who want to be free. We are going to be free. Take back your freedom.
Do you know why this is called Hemp Fest and not Pot Fest? There's a book that was written in 1980, I think 89 or 88 or something like that. Do you know what that book is? The what? The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Do you know who the Emperor, the Hemperor of our entire, the godfather of our movement is? What's his name? Jack! Do you love him? Yeah! Then I want you to say, we love you! We love you! Ladies and gentlemen, the man responsible for our movement, the father of our movement. We would not be here without him. We would not be Hempfest. How can we show our love? We have one chance to show your love to Jack Harris!
Every year we come here and we want to do what's right. And what's right, the same thing I told you last year, is voting. They can't beat you when you vote. That's the only thing you got to fucking be over them. That you're voting. I had a stroke about 2 years ago, and I am getting better.
let's get back to marijuana use. Government assumes two things when it comes to marijuana use. Number one is you need to go to jail, or number two, you belong in treatment. And you know what? That just isn't the case. Most people that smoke marijuana like other people have cocktails in the evenings. It's not a good choice. I don't suggest it. I think it's an incredible handicap. But do you belong in prison? Are you criminal for that choice?
Governor?
No.
Let me get Lynn now. You there, Mr. Knopfsinger, sir?
Yeah, I'm here.
Lynn, we regret to re-inform some folks out there that you lost your daughter in 1994 to cancer, and she was a medical marijuana user. Now, that makes you foursquare in favor of medical marijuana use, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Not only that, I've learned a lot since.
But you also admire General McCaffrey. You know the banner that he's carrying. So tell me your feelings here as you listen.
And by the way, I haven't told you what I thought about medical marijuana. We're talking about marijuana legalization. If it comes to the medical use of cannabinoids for the control of pain or other medical indications, all of us are foursquare for NIDA and the FDA making these drugs available, if it's controlled clinical studies.
Mr. Knopfsinger, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what he means by controlled clinical studies.
What stands to reason now is for you to understand that it is not the effects of this wonderful God-given herb that the government objects to. It is the fact that they're not able to protect the pharmaceutical industry from the laws of all the chemicals that are going to go down the drain the minute cannabis reclaims its rightful place in a society where it has been medicine since the beginning of time.
I do know that if there's enough evidence out there that marijuana helps when other medicines do not, such as Marinol.
Where in the Constitution does the federal government find the power to ban or regulate drugs? The Cato Institute has distributed 2 million pocket copies of the Constitution. I try to remember to carry mine, especially when I'm going to give a speech and mention it. And if you look in here, you would be hard-pressed to find anything that gives the federal government the power to prohibit marijuana. Now, in 1920, people understood this. When they wanted to ban alcohol, they passed a constitutional amendment. You can't say much good about that amendment. But at least the prohibitionists had enough respect for the Constitution to go through the formal amendment process.
There's enough evidence out there that it not only helps people with chemotherapy who have nausea and diarrhea and loss of appetite. It also helps people who have glaucoma. It helps people with multiple sclerosis.
If I may differ, sir, it doesn't help with glaucoma. The Institute of Medicine study.
I tell you that you haven't talked to people who it has helped, and I have.
Well, but I spent $1 million on a study out of the Institute of Medicine.
Spending money, but government is not looking at the people that it does help, and the fact is it has kept people with glaucoma from going blind, and you can find people who will tell you that. And
they just don't happen to be in the National Institute of Drug Abuse or the FDA.
Oh, well, I don't care about that because government can twist things around any way it wants to make its point. And my point is that medical marijuana is usable to help people with pain, to help people with nausea, to help people with the wasting symptoms of AIDS, to help people with glaucoma. Right. And there are people out there who will testify that it helps them.
And, yes, and you know from personal experience, your daughter's pain, nausea, diarrhea, all the accompanying symptoms to the serious illness that was to consume her life, relieved all those symptoms.
Yes, you know, we don't claim, I don't think anybody claims that marijuana is a cure, but it's a palliative. And what it did for her is it got rid of the nausea, it helped with the diarrhea, right. It restored her appetite, and it gave her some comfort during that period of her life when she was undergoing this.
And your feelings about that, General?
Well, you know, the bottom line is I've spent probably 3 years of my life in hospitals. I've had 17 surgeries. I am all for any reputable therapeutic intervention to control pain. We don't do it very well. The American medical establishment needs better training. We do have terrific drugs nowadays. But at the end of the day, if it's medical marijuana we're talking about, disassociating 32 cannabinoids and using them in controlled doses for medical reasons, have at it. But make the science do it, not a bunch of potheads in California.
Well, you know, that's a nice, easy insult, but a lot of those potheads in California, in fact, have been taking marijuana because they have one affliction or another, and it has helped them.
Well, you got to hear what I said now, Mr. Noxinger. I actually believe that if it's medical intervention we're talking about, then have the FDA and the NIH do disassociative studies, put out the cannabinoids in pill or a rapid onset delivery vehicle. We're all for it.
Well, General, are you aware of the fact that at one time the federal government was giving marijuana cigarettes to 17 people, and now it's down to 7, but some of those people had glaucoma, and it was helping them with glaucoma?
Actually, the Institute of, you picked one of the few indications, by the way, for which it's probably not helpful. But we are fully convinced that NIDA should fund any legitimate investigation of either smoked marijuana in the short term or, more importantly, pure cannabinoid research in the long term. We're all for it, as long as it's science and medicine we're talking about.
The federal government's contemporary prohibition policy is an illegal and unconstitutional usurpation of a power never granted to it.
We've been talking about the issue of legalizing marijuana in San Francisco. City Supervisor Mark Leno has put a proposal on the ballot in November to gauge interest in government-grown and distributed marijuana. You're going to have, we're going to grow pot the city's going to grow the pot. Do I understand you?
First of all, I've been following your debate here, and for the general to say he wants to put facts on the table, to use inflammatory words like potheads in California really confuses me. This is a medical issue, a serious medical issue. I'm concerned about the thousands and thousands of San Franciscans, Californians, and Americans who depend upon a safe and reliable access to their medicines. There is no good reason in the world why the federal government should stand between ill and vulnerable citizens and the medicines they depend upon. So for all of your years in your position, you talk now about, yes, we should go ahead with these studies. It is pure politics, and that is the simple truth, that have prevented the kind of research that we should have done decades and decades
Mark, let me get...
The war on non-corporate drugs is a war that has to end. And I know all of you here feel that way. And I'd say that our opinion is not the minority, I'd say it's the true majority.
And so what does every administration do? They have to do a new study. Because they don't have the balls to come out and say things should be checked. We got to study it again. They all do a study. It all comes back the same. It makes you eat cookie dough.
General McCaffrey, if he was here, he would say that industrial hemp is a stalking horse for marijuana. Well, I have news for you, General McCaffrey. At 1/3 of 1% THC, even you couldn't get high smoking industrial hemp.
The thing is, though, that we had built in a premise that wasn't correct. That being that the government was somehow looking at either common sense, truth and fact, or at least what the people want as a basis of doing their policies. And so, as it turned out, none of those things is true. The government works on what we call legal fiction, which means that the politicians make up stuff, they pass it into law, and the courts are then bound to act like it's true, whether it's true or not. The truth. I work as an expert witness in the courts. And one of the things that totally amazes me is that I have to keep, every time I get done today, make me take an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But yet, in a federal court, it doesn't matter what the truth is. What matters is the way that the law has been written to redefine reality.
We need to take a stand that many of us have refused to take in the past, and that is, we must let elected officials know that you no longer win votes and you no longer win elections by locking up marijuana smokers.
And when one of the jurors got confused about it, and she called the lawyer, and the lawyer said, if you don't vote the way the judge wants, you could get in big trouble. And now this same judge is deciding whether the jury had misconduct. Here we have it, bribed and intimidated witnesses, confused and intimidated jury members. You know, this is the first time in American history that a jury has repudiated its verdict.
pay more attention to the media that's going on now. John Stossel, did anybody get a listen, a watch? ABC News, John Stossel. He needs some support from you. He needs some letters, and ABC needs to know that you appreciate the truth being out there, that we need that kind of reporting, that we need much more of it, in fact, because he's getting the backlash now from people who call themselves religions. I don't think they have any spirituality, because I know of no religion that would demand that the citizens mistreat seriously ill patients. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Sounds like a devil-worshipping thing to me. Well, it's called corporate America. The patients are competing against the pharmaceutical companies because before cannabis was illegal, it alleviated far too many malices and suffering, much more than any other can, as safely as cannabis does. So yes, they will lose a lot of business. Not to mention there is a petroleum industry that the patients just can't fight. But it has substituted this plant with almost 50,000 chemical products, petroleum-based. I want all of us to wear these beautiful clothes in the spirit of Thanksgiving, in which we take that sacrament when we take a toke. This is one of God's greatest gifts to us.
And in order to make things safe in the galaxy for cannabis smokers, I suggest you grow lots and lots of cannabis. See, because they can't get it all, okay? They can take down one ship, they can take down another, but they can't get it all. So grow, grow, grow. And you know what? Grow organically. No need to use chemicals. Grow organically. Mother Earth loves you.
The farmers can grow the grains to make the biodiesel, they can grow the grains to make the ethanol, and they can make their biodiesel, and then with the waste product, using potassium hydroxide to have a good soil builder, the ingredients to make potash. So that's the loop. Got to close that loop.
Our challenge is to convert that public support into public policy, and I have a couple of specific suggestions for how I think we get there. First, we must contact our elected officials at all levels of government to let them know there is a large constituency of voters out there who oppose treating marijuana smokers like criminals.
So candidates need to know that we can mount a sizable number of people. Against them if they try to do what Bush and Gore did in the last election, which was a conspiracy of silence. Neither one of them wanted to mention it because both their hypocrisies were so glaring that they just left it off the field, because both of them had such an immense drug history in their own lives. They knew firsthand. I could forgive Bob Dole, who was like my father, you know, don't you be shooting pot, you know, that. I could forgive that era. I cannot forgive the Al Gores and George Bushes, who were right there when drugs were fun and not the greatest evil in America.
Who do you think got better weed in college? George Bush Jr. or Bill Clinton?
George Bush Jr.
And why?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a really funny question.
Social movements take decades to happen. You know, women worked for the right to vote, the right to own property for 100 years until it finally happened. The ending of slavery took hundreds of years before it finally happened. Civil rights for minorities took hundreds of years, but it did happen.
But it is difficult. As long as the patients and those of us who use it recreationally as well have to fight against a large, ever-growing, corrupt prison industry that supplies cheap labor. Guess who for?
It came as a shock, like a lightning bolt from hell last September when, to my utter astonishment, the DEA raided WHAM in Santa Cruz, and and took the garden down.
My name is Ben Rice, and I'm very proud to tell you that I, for several years, have been Valerie and Michael Corral's attorney and the attorney for Wham. What I'm very, very happy to tell you is, as a result of the arrest of Valerie and Michael, some of our state's, and actually our country's finest lawyers have signed on to help us. All right. Okay, those are trial lawyers and those are constitutional law lawyers. And those lawyers have joined us because, like me and like you folks, they know what kind of people Valerie and Michael are and what kind of an organization Wham is. These nice people back here, this is Wham, right here. This is Wham. Part of our purpose in being here today is to put a human face on Wham, to introduce to more people Valerie and Michael and this great organization. Because if people understand who they are, understand their suffering, their courage, their determination, and the care, love, and help that they have brought to this community, then it's much less likely that we'll ever see something like what happened in the early dark morning of September 5th. Back here, you can see that these are some of the leading members of our community. Political leaders, we have religious leaders, and medical leaders. They too have seen in the work that they do, the great work that Wham has done. That's why they're here today. The support that Wham enjoys in this community cuts across all the political lines. You know, the city council here and the board of supervisors for the county both unanimously voted to a resolution to support Wham and to decry what happened here when the DEA came in on September 5th. And I want to acknowledge the civic leaders who are present here today. I want to start with Marty Warmhout. She's asked to address this community.
As an elected official, I am obviously committed to changing bad law and bad social policy through the legislative process. But when our own government becomes the aggressor against powerless people, I feel I have a higher moral obligation to stand with the powerless, and that is why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. You know, the top cop in our state couldn't be here today, but this is tremendous. Bill Lockyer has been a friend to Wham. He supports the Wham community and Valerie and Michael in particular. I want to read this quote from him. The letter he wrote to Attorney General Ashcroft. This is a quote. "This is targeting people who, consistent with California voters' direction, are trying to provide medicine to people that are terminally ill and in need of help. For the federal government to step on that, it just strikes me that they're a bunch of big bullies." Our U.S. Representative Sam Farr said he was appalled and praised Wham as an extremely responsible collective. They have operated in a way that has been exemplary. It is not reassuring to me to know that federal agents, instead of concentrating on issues of national security, are running around the mountains of Santa Cruz County, disrupting the work of people who provide a valuable medical resource to the community. Make sure I have this quote right. Well, I want to point out that we have the Santa Cruz City Council here. Mayor Christopher Crone.
That's all I'll do. That's all I'll do. Thank you all for coming. I'm not, very few words today from the politicos. I just wanted to thank, and I hope you will with me, I'm going to introduce the Santa Cruz City Council members who are here with us today and stand shoulder to shoulder in support of WHAM. We have Vice Mayor Emily Riley. Would you all sort of come forward so people can see you? We have Council Member Tim Fitzmaurice. We have Councilmember Scott Kennedy. Thank you, thank you. We have Councilmember Mark Premack. And we have somebody who has supported this for a long time, long before I was mayor, and who is a council candidate, Mike Rotkin. Please come forward. Am I good, everybody? Excuse me, last council member that's also here, Ed Porter. Excuse me. And that's really all, and today is patience. Who are behind me, patience. It's about patience. Thank you.
Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Arnie Leff.
As many of you know, I have been an AIDS doctor here since the beginning of the epidemic. And for a few years, I was the hospice medical director and continue to care for hundreds of patients in this community. I cannot tell you the times I have blessed Valerie and Michael Corral for being there for patients. Patients of mine who have tried everything without success and obtained relief from the herbal medicine provided by WHAM. One telephone call and that patient would receive not just medication, but also support of other patients who are also in desperate need. Hundreds of these patients are no longer with us. They're no longer physically here, though I am sure that they are pleased with the support that they are being shown today. How things have gotten out of hand as to criminalize a relatively safe herbal medicine and prohibit its use by terminally ill people and others who are significantly ill. How did this happen to us? The federal government and our legislators continue the policy which classifies this herb as if it were crack cocaine or methamphetamine, or for heroin for that matter. What message do we send our young people when the obvious untruths are promulgated by our agencies? We should say quite clearly to them that medicinal medicine is not recreational medicine. They are different things. This is not about a bunch of people getting high or lighting up a joint. In fact, just the opposite. Sometimes patients often complain they get high from the prescription medicine Marinol. By using Wham's herbal medicine, they are able to not get high and just have their appetite improved and their nausea corrected. It's sort of ironic that the drug that's approved by the federal government sometimes makes people more high than the so-called herbal medication that Wham is providing. Today, we honor our courageous patients and their supporters. I can only hope, as one caring physician among many, as one medical professional among any, that the federal government will eventually change its policy, a simple administrative edict to classify this herbal medicine as what it truly is, an effective drug for those who are ill and suffering. Thank you very much.
I wonder if we all yelled loud enough they'd go away, but I rather doubt it. Our next speaker, okay. No, it's not gonna, no. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Josh Schiffman from Stanford University. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so very much for coming out today to support Wham and Valerie and Mike. Everyone deserves a round of applause. Let me tell you why I'm here today. I'm here because I've taken an oath as a physician to ease human suffering. Now, I am a young doctor. I'm just starting out in my career, and I have actually never prescribed nor recommended marijuana to any patient before. But let me tell you how I found myself here real quickly. One afternoon, I read an article about Wham in a local newspaper, and I was blown away. I had cared for many dying patients, children, and adults. And I said, this is an organization I need to learn about. And I called Valerie on the telephone, and I spoke with Valerie, and I later came to speak with Mike, too. And anyone who's spoken with these individuals knows that they're full of love for everyone, full of compassion. And through them, I was able to meet the other members of Wham. And I have to tell you, as a doctor, I have never seen more medicine, better medicine, more humanistic medicine delivered than by the members of the Wham organization. These people up here, to my left, to my right, this is what being a doctor is about. This is what taking care of people is about. This is what being a human being is about. There's no beeping monitors. There are no pulse oximeters going off or alarms in the night or IV tubing. These are just people loving people. And it's all because of these two individuals up here. So as a physician, my plea is not to make this a battle about state versus federal rights. My plea is to make this a battle about the patients. And please, no matter what, Mr. Bush, no matter what, Mr. Ashcroft, no matter what, Mr. Hutchinson, please, please remember the patients. Thank you. Our next speaker is really one of Valerie and Michael's most illustrious attorneys, Gerald Ullman from the University of Santa Clara Law School, one of our country's finest legal minds, and a great, great human being. Come on, Joe.
I put together a checklist for the media of all of the constitutional arguments that we're going to be making on Mike and Valerie's behalf. The 4th Amendment, the 10th Amendment, the 14th Amendment. But really, when you boil it all down, there's really only one issue in the case of United States versus Valerie and Mike Corral and 238 sick and dying citizens of Santa Cruz County. That issue is, has compassion for the sick and dying become a federal crime? Compassion for the sick and dying is what motivated the people of California to adopt Proposition 215. Remember, it is called the Compassionate Use Act. Compassion for the sick and dying is what motivates Valerie and Mike Corral. WHAM is a collective hospice. We're giving comfort and love to those afflicted with AIDS and other serious afflictions is the only priority. This is not interstate commerce. This is grassroots Santa Cruz compassion. This is not defiance of federal authority. This is recognition of a higher law that commands us to love one another. You know, there was a time when the federal government made allowances for compassion. In fact, they called it the Compassionate IND Program, in which the federal government directly distributed marijuana to over 80 patients. In 1992, the first President Bush shut that program down because, quote, it was sending the wrong message. Well, today, we are gathered to send the right message back to our president, who professes to be a compassionate conservative. And the message we want to send is this: if you need more evidence that marijuana has therapeutic value for sick people who are wasting away because they can't eat, or for cancer patients whose treatment produces severe nausea, or for those who can find no other relief from intractable pain, come and talk to the patients of WHAM. Come and talk to their physicians. Come and talk to Valerie and Mike Corral. Declare us a federal research project, but don't send DEA agents with automatic rifles and search warrants. Apparently, the DEA is also concerned about the message we are sending to the children of Santa Cruz County. Well, even our children can understand the difference between recreational abuse of drugs, which we condemn, and the medical use of drugs by sick people, which we approve. We are teaching our children compassion for the sick and dying, and only a twisted and perverted federal bureaucrat could call that the wrong message. I am proud to represent Valerie and Mike Corral. The program that they direct is a model that should be emulated, in which patients are actively involved in cultivating their own medicine in an atmosphere of love and support for each other. Valerie and Mike are themselves role models for compassion. They deserve to be embraced, not clapped in handcuffs behind their backs. They deserve to be applauded, not arrested and arraigned in federal court. And they deserve to be honored not with subpoenas or search warrants, but with the support and encouragement of their fellow citizens. Thank you for showing that support and encouragement. I give you Valerie and Mike Corral.
I see everyone a hero, everyone who's willing to be honest about who they are, honest about what they use and how they choose to use it, and honest about the human condition, our frailty. And being human is being fraught with many different frailties. And I know that when we began this journey, we didn't begin it alone. We began it on an island in Santa Cruz, and with many supporters, and people who are here tonight, Andrea and Eudora, and people who helped us to find the way. And I believe that it was when Mike actually gave me enough sake here after a normal conference saying, come on down, this is the moment we've been waiting for our whole lives. So it would not be a simple task, and it would not be a simple journey if we did not do this together. And I think that probably the most important thing that we have come to understand is what we share with one another, and how when we look into each other, we see ourselves. And that's what makes WHAM easy, and that's what makes standing down in this time that's fraught with a really terrifying regime in Washington, that we must really do our life's work. And there's a great deal of reward in that. And I think that you can ask the many heroes who have faced prison terms, who have been in jail, who have seen that dark night of the soul and rested through that time and came to stand up and face the light and to shine that light of truth on other people, because that's really what we have to do, because we're really practicing for our own moment, and that's the moment of death. And, you know, the government pales.
Thank you, everybody. The first thing I want to say is please remember all of those that have been arrested and prosecuted. Always remember them. And I consider this group here to be the family of freedom. We stand up for what's right, we speak our minds, and we're willing to take the heat for it. And as long as we keep doing that, we will prevail. We will win. To the feds, I say no.
Call your relatives, get them to register to vote, get everybody across America to ask your candidate, do you support medical marijuana? Will you vote to keep my family out of jail? Will you vote to take our people out of jail and free the prisoners? Amnesty for marijuana prisoners. Amnesty. Amnesty is the peaceful way. Amnesty is the way of love. And that is why we are going to win.
We need to all take a pledge. Let's all marijuana smokers pledge we will never again vote for an elected official who wants to treat us like criminals. Let me close by reminding you that we are only incidentally talking about marijuana. We are really talking about personal freedom. And with your help, we are going to restore a measure of personal freedom to the lives and careers of tens of millions of responsible marijuana users throughout this country. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana. If you smoke marijuana, please come out of the closet and let other people know. It is time we stopped arresting smokers. Thank you.
This guy, Keith Straub, is an amazing individual right here. And, you know, if every one of you just gave $10 to Normal today, it would be huge. So, think about it.
We can't do this. We can't. We can't possibly legalize pot for responsible Americans without you getting involved. It's literally going to be impossible.
So President Bush said a few weeks ago that we have a new slogan and we should all get behind it, and I agree. And that's why I say to you tonight, and I hope you take what I say seriously, make change happen, and let's roll.